We're looking here at the launch of the Hatsusei, one of these four major battleships, and this was launched at Elzig in June of 1899. It was at the time the largest battleship yet to have been built on the Tyne, and the different stages of the launch were well recorded in photographs such as this one. The Newcastle Central Library has a wonderful collection of these sorts of images, and indeed when I was first doing my research, Vickers and other sources certainly underlined for me the wealth of material that was available and the importance that was attached to the ceremonials connected to the building of ships. The launchings were in themselves kind of major rites of passage, and culturally most interesting in terms of how Japan was pictured. It is a particular interest of mine, the image of Japan in Britain and the West in the late 19th century following this reopening to trade in 1858. We're looking here at the launch card of the Asama, which was built in 1898. Launch cards of this sort were generally issued on such occasions as a memento and also as a record of the ship's vital statistics. So on one side you might have falling blossoms, and on the other side you'd have the hard facts of displacement statistics. But the images include blossoming trees, fans, samurai motifs. Interesting in itself, because in a way this is the flip side of Japan's image as a warrior nation. Japan, in as much as she was known in the West shortly after the reopening to trade, was known on the one hand as this wonderful aesthetic nation, but on the other hand samurai culture, the culture of Bushido, attracted great interest as well. So it was this aesthetic culture which came to so influence artists in the West, and it's most interesting that we see reflections of it in the launch cards of the time. This is the launch card for the Iwate, built in 1900, and here again a blend of Art Nouveau and ship displacement statistics remind us that cultural stereotypes can never be so simply defined. Something of an iconic image, and one which is a favorite photograph of mine, is this view of the Hatsusei passing through the swing bridge. Now, in this image we see the ship passing through the Armstrong design swing bridge to enable it to go out to sea. Now, you'll remember that earlier photograph I showed you with the high-level bridge, and of course you can see it here. There was a low-level bridge which was subsequently replaced. Armstrong designed this feat of hydraulic engineering which was opened in 1876. Remember that the Elzig shipyard was about, I think I've got this right, 1.5 miles to the west of Newcastle city centre. And so by building his yard in this rather unusual part of the river, there was a requirement to have a bridge, a swing bridge, that would enable ships to pass out to sea. And indeed, on completion in 1901, the Hatsusei sailed to Portsmouth to take part in a naval pageant, symbolically representing the Emperor at Queen Victoria's funeral, before joining the Japanese fleet at Port Arthur. Against the backdrop of the Anglo-Japanese alliance of 1902, that very important alliance between Britain and Japan, Japan went on to defeat Russia in the Russo-Japanese War of 1904-5. Her naval power was considered a major factor in this victory. This ship, the I seem to have slipped a slide. Okay. Go back on. Yeah. Okay. I should mention that in terms of the business relationship, I've mentioned this in passing earlier, that Armstrong himself passed over the day-to-day handling of his affairs to Sir Andrew Noble, who is that wonderful bewhiskered chap. And you can see him surrounded by Japanese, and Lady Noble is seated. She is seated next to Admiral Togo, who was the admiral of the fleet, the great hero of the Russo-Japanese War. And Togo paid a visit of pilgrimage to Newcastle in 1911 to visit the Elsick shipyard and to view the yard and meet the men who had built these very amazing ships for Japan. This shows a slightly earlier image from 1906. This is the last major battleship built for Japan on Tyneside. It was the Kashima, and you're looking at the different stages of the launch. At the launch of the Kashima, Sir Andrew Noble made the point that all the ships engaged in the Battle of the Japan Sea were armed with guns from Elsick. The Admiral of the fleet, Heihachiro Togo's flagship, you've just seen a photo of Togo, his ship, the Mikasa, his flagship, had actually been built at Barrow-in-Furness in Cumbria, but was armed at Elsick. It's a ship that is now a museum in Japan and well known to most Japanese. Here again, a photograph that it always gives me great pleasure to show Togo's heroes at St. James's Park. When the crew of the Kashima arrived in Newcastle to collect their ship, they were celebrated virtually as war heroes. Remember, it is often said that the great naval battles of the Russo-Japanese War were also fought in the shipyards of the time, because some yards were building for Russia, and of course Armstrong's yard, Elsick, was very much building for Japan, and virtually all of the ships in Togo's fleet had gunnery from the Elsick factory. When the crew arrived in Newcastle, they were taken among the various festivities. There were lunches, there were dinners, there were all kinds of special occasions. But they were taken, you'll all be pleased to see, to a football match at St. James's Park, Newcastle versus Stoke-on-Trent. And they were, as you can see, hailed as Togo's heroes. The 150 crew members were heartily cheered by the crowd on arrival, and again as the Japanese national anthem Kimigayo was played. So a very interesting encounter. Now, when Togo came to Newcastle in 1911, he was entertained at a Mansion House luncheon hosted by the Lord Mayor of Newcastle and the Tyne Commissioners. And he paid the following tribute to Elsick and the city of Newcastle. And I suppose I really should go back a slide, or a couple of slides, to draw up the photo of Togo. It is a well-known fact, he said, that the name Newcastle is inseparable from the pages of the history of the Japanese Navy. So many men of war have either been built or armed by the famous works of Elsick. A great number of our officers and men have studied in this city how to build ships and how to make guns. I believe I'm not flattering you too much if I say, but for the kind help of your people, the history of the growth of the Japanese Navy might have been written in a different way. So the Elsick connection was of foremost importance to the Japanese, and it was well remembered. Indeed, naval and industrial missions of pilgrimage to Elsick continued for many years after Togo's visit in 1911, as did the Armstrong family's links with Japan.